seconds to breathe.
We are in the final stretch of camp, and just like we predicted, a lot of these guys are giving management a run for their money.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jessica Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Today, we are starting our week off with some camp recaps, along with players that are seizing the moment and some that are just underperforming. And of course, we are in the final stretch, in the final week of camp, as this season starts next week. So who is going to redeem themselves or stun us with finding themselves on the opening night roster? Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your Calgary Flames every day. And let's jump right into this, because there have been some players that we expected to have a good camp, like Suniev and Parekh, but Medved Gridin has played very well, and we're going to talk about him, Parekh, and Kerins here in a second. But I just want to say that this is like one of those times where I'm kind of like kicking myself for some of these signings, and I think this team could be slightly more effective if you didn't necessarily have a Ryan Lomberg on the fourth line, or had Justin Kirkland's fourth line center spot available. That is kind of controversial, because I know that Lomberg's like the big vibes guy, big locker room guy, but I feel like having those spots available to young players is a lot more important. And let's start with Rory Kerins, because he was the player that ended up getting a shot in the NHL last season. His development was kind of derailed by COVID, and he's had 1 goal and 3 assists through 4 games. Morgan Frost is the only other player with more points. I am a very big proponent of letting Kerins have another run at the NHL level and give him a little bit more rope than you did last time. And that's the thing, because you want to be a better and younger team, right? And unfortunately, you have to take chances and risks. And I think that Kerins would be a great fourth line center to rotate in throughout the season. However, he does require waivers, and I'm not entirely sure that I would expect him to clear. I don't think he would. I don't know. It's hard to say. Earlier this weekend, the Flames put Jeremy Poirier on waivers, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe like someone will take a chance on him. He cleared, was assigned to the Wranglers, but like with Kerins, he could be a sneaky good depth player at the NHL level, and the Flames they just have to do it. They have to figure something out. But let's talk just some numbers here real quick from his night against the Jets. He went 4 for 9 at the faceoff dot against established NHLers like Jonathan Toews and Mark Scheifele. That, to me, that's big. I mean, I know that Toews hasn't played in the NHL in a few years and obviously isn't prime JT anymore, but to go up against Scheifele like that too it's pretty impressive. And I think that it's time to let him kind of take the reins here a little bit. And of course, let's talk about Zayne Parekh, because he is settling in so nicely, and his performance against the Jets was pretty solid as well. This is the future quarterback of the first power play. Probably the second at some point this season, I would say. But he did score. He ended up scoring on the power play. One of the biggest things that I really enjoyed about the Flames power play a few years back is the confidence that Rasmus Andersson had when he just like shot the puck and when he has to make those decisions. And I fully believe we're going to see the same thing from Parekh, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I think with the position the Flames are in terms of kind of having a log jam with Andersson, with Miramonov, with Bean, you have to pull some punches. So they need to do themselves, not just themselves, but like everyone a favor and trade Andersson. I know that there's been talk of, oh, well, the door's not shut. I'll never shut the door in Calgary. Well, I'm shutting it because we're not doing the Noah Hanifin trade 2.0 again. We're just not. It's not anything I'm interested in, and I don't think it's anything the Flames should be interested in. But waive Jake Bean. They will not put Jake Bean on waivers, but they have to do something to get Zayne Parekh in the NHL lineup on a consistent basis. That is my biggest thing. That is my biggest thing heading into the season in this final week of training camp. I am also thoroughly impressed with Matvei Gridin. He also scored against the Jets, and him and Parekh were the only two Flames goals, and in a 4-2 loss. But that's okay, because you know what? At least they didn't get shut out again. And Gridin has kind of, I don't know if it's like a placeholder situation or what, but he's back up on the top line with Frost and Coronado. I really like it. I'm not opposed to it, and like on paper it does kind of look a little funny just because Frost is like an established NHLer, I guess, and Coronado had such a strong season, but Gridin fits in very well there, and I like it. I think that it's a good start to building chemistry. And the Flames do take on the Kraken tonight in their final road game of the preseason, and it's crunch time. It feels like we're approaching that like 11th hour right before, your essays due at midnight and whatnot. But we're going to talk about the players that are just driving the struggle bus, because as much positive as there's been equal amounts of missed opportunities and underperformance. Coming up next on Locked On Flames. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal financial tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you, and you can link all of your accounts within minutes and see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. That's one of my favorite things. I don't like doing the spreadsheets, but when you can get a clear visual of where you're allocating your money, where you might need to cut back, or where you can kind of put a little more away, maybe for a nice vacation, it's nice. It's nice to see and have someone do the work for you. You can identify that you aren't saving as much as you thought, and Monarch helps you notice inefficient investment allocations and discover forgotten 401ks from past jobs. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off of your first year. That's 50% off of your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. And this is always like the stinky part of camp, because there's players that you kind of expected to either really shine or flourish or take the next steps in their game. And obviously, it's camp. It's still early. Most of these guys have not played like a true competitive game in 4+ months. However, I am under the impression of, if you are fighting for an NHL roster spot, like two players that we're going to talk about here coming up next, or coming up here, you should be leaving it all out on the ice, especially when you have a lot of people doubting you. I think that, maybe you give it a little more oomph, or maybe it's just not in the cards right now. And you still got to take those steps to get to that next step. So let's talk about Martin Pospisil. Pospisil just signed another 2-year extension with the Flames, and he is apparently part of this longer term picture. I personally never thought that he was going to be a longer term player in this organization for what the vision is, or for what I thought the vision was last season or even the season before. Obviously, Craig Conroy feels differently. He has come a bit of a way since taking a lot of penalties, costly penalties, and let's be honest, the level of physicality has been reined in, which is good. My biggest concern here is, of course, his offensive production. I get that he is more of a bottom six player, but you don't necessarily have to put up 20 goals a season, but you still need to find a way to contribute and not send your team on the penalty kill and not find yourself in a suspension worthy position. And I think that it just feels like it's time for the Flames to move on from Pospisil, and it's nothing against the player. I just don't know what truly what the long-term plan for him is, because you can see a clear long-term plan with Coronado, with Dustin Wolf, Parekh, even Zary, like a longer, maybe not the full long term, but like you have this 3-year bridge deal that makes complete sense. This Pospisil extension that came in, it was out of the blue, and I don't think a lot of people I think it left a lot of people scratching their heads, which, it is what it is. However, we're going to have to see how this goes, because right now, out of the established NHL players that have done their rounds this preseason, I would say he looks like the odd man out. I don't feel as if he is necessarily, I don't want to, it just doesn't look great for him. And what I do like about him is that you can play him down the middle, you can play him on the wing. There is some variety there, which is great. You need that versatility, but I would much rather have, I want this year for him to be a year where we finally see it kind of click, and there isn't any of, or there's a lot less of the physicality and just ill-timed penalties, severely costly penalties, and quite frankly, avoidable penalties, because he plays a very undisciplined game, and I don't think the Flames are in a position where they can afford to be on the penalty kill as often as they were last season. They're just not, they're not built like that right now. So let's just not mess with it. And do I think that they could trade him? Yeah, I think a lot of teams would probably be interested in a Martin Pospisil-like player. However, let's kind of pump the brakes there. We still have a bit of a ways to go before I think we need to start truly exploring that avenue. But speaking of Pospisil, let's talk about his workout buddy from this summer, Sam Honzek. Sam Honzek came into camp 15 pounds heavier, and he looked really good coming out of the gate. It was kind of like a haha, I told you so moment. But then the tables kind of turned, and Honzek doubters were kind of vindicated because he kind of fell off. And I'm not sure if this is, again, just a situation where it's the preseason, it's about finding your footing, or if we've kind of seen what we're going to get out of Honzek. I don't want to believe that. I think that there is still some untapped potential there. It is just a matter of tapping that potential and finding ways to bring it out. Do I think he is going to be a top 6 player? No. Not in this organization. Maybe if he I don't know, he would need to drink like some sort of magic potion, I think, quite frankly. And if he's a depth player, so be it. But the Flames have enough of those. So I don't really know what more you can want, I guess. You don't have that sounds so mean. You have enough players to where Sam Honzek is easily expendable. I think most of the Flames players right now, given the state of the organization and this rebuild, are expendable. And real quickly here, Devin Cooley. Devin Cooley has had a tough preseason. I thought that he would be the goalie coming out on top here. I thought that, he was going to come in and give Prosvetov a run for his money and just kind of make the decision a little bit harder. But it's hard to fault him for a lot of the goals when you have pylons and traffic cones standing in front of you as defensemen. What more are you supposed to do? You can only do so much. And unfortunately, it's just very underwhelming. And Cooley would have to go on waivers. So, you're kind of hoping. I mean, I don't necessarily think anyone would claim him, but anytime you put a decent player or really any player on waivers, you're at the risk of losing them. And the Flames, as time goes on, they're going to have more and more players that get exposed to waivers, and it's not something they should want to be messing with, especially, in a few years down the line when it comes to guys like Gridden or Suniev, now with Kerins, like Jeremy Poirier, like there's a lot of risk, and I don't necessarily know how much reward may be in there. But coming up next, we're going to wrap up the show with talking about the Flames' battle against Seattle tonight, as well as the lineup and who could potentially make a real run for it and give a strong last impression. Coming up next on Locked On Flames. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put $5 down, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets that you can use across the app. I love using the FanDuel app because it is so easy to use. It adds excitement to my Sundays, and I just love hammering me over simply because I am a big fan of offense. So if I need something to spice up a game against two teams I don't really care about, there we go. We got a little more investment in it. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're following me on Twitter at JeffSpellMosto. The Flames wrap up their final road preseason game against the Kraken tonight, and time's ticking. It is very hard to believe that the regular season starts next week. I can't believe that we have made it through camp. We have only seen, one I don't really think any of the cuts have been surprising. I think that this next round is going to be a little more it's going to be a little tougher because there are players that you might think deserve that spot, and unfortunately just due to roster construction and maybe poor roster management, I don't know. You don't see your favorite prospect make the jump this year, or I shouldn't say that, right out of camp. Tonight's lines is, of course, you got Gridden, Frost, and Coronado as your top line. I like it. I think that giving Gridden two dynamic players like that, you're setting him up for success. I like the second line a lot, to be honest. It's Farabee, Kerins, and Klapka. I think that Klapka has more potential than just being like a fourth line, bottom six guy. I think that he has potential to be more of like a middle six guy, or maybe a third liner that you can bump up to the second line in a pinch. Because right now your third line is Lomberg, Kirkland, and Pospisil. I don't see any of those players outplaying Klapka right now to be on that, like to have their spots switched, I guess. And then, of course, your fourth line is going to be Sam Honzek, Sam Morton, and Adar Suniev. This defensive group just really makes me, like, this is the leftovers. That sounds so mean. But it's Bean and Pahal as your top pairing. I don't know why they're flipped like that unless they're working on like some sort of experiment to try Pahal on the right. But sure. Cechek and Solyov. So, man, Solo and Kuznetsov are both in this defensive group tonight. And it just kind of stinks because both of these players have just kind of gotten like scraps. But both deserve some, some time in the NHL. And of course, for your third pairing, you have Kuznetsov and Hunter Brustewicz. And your starting goaltender is Dustin Wolf, and backing him up is Owen Say. This is one of the last times to make an impression. If you are kind of teetering on that line of, you're not risking anything by sending him back to the AHL because you can just reassign him. Or if you're Rory Kerins and you're going to have to go on waivers, you need to go out there and have a career game. You have to go out there like this is game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. Don't hurt yourself, but you need to go out there and show how bad you want this. All of these guys have to do it, but I think there's a lot on the line for Kerins. And not only just for him and his future, but the Flames as well. Because if you have an asset like that, you can turn him into something. Quite frankly, I would much rather have him on my fourth line than Ryan Lomberg or Justin Kirkland or I'm like these depth players that we talk about all the time. You don't need these vibes and grinders and grittiness on your fourth line. The game has changed. I want to see skill. I want to see talent. I want to see players who can create offense. It does not matter if you scored 30 goals or if you score 10 or less. I just want to know that you can find the back of the net. And I think Kerins is an upgrade over what is likely going to be their fourth line. And I don't think it is worth putting him on waivers. I would honestly feel more comfortable putting Justin Kirkland on waivers, which I know they're not going to do. I don't think they do it. Do I? If I had to say, oh yeah, they would put, like, who are they more likely to put on waivers, Jake Bean or Justin Kirkland? I would say Justin Kirkland. So, I mean, you gotta kind of think big, like think about the bigger picture, but also like what's at stake for your team if you don't let this happen. We know the Flames have a tough 9 games right out of the gate. We saw how important those going 5-0 to start last season was. Can they do? I'm not saying they need to go 9-0, but can they, have a little bit of a cushion? Can they build that early on for themselves? And I think that it's a possibility that they do. But that will do it for me here on today's episode of Locked On Flames. We are just over a week away from the regular season kicking off, and I can't believe it. I feel like we blinked and this off season just went by. But make sure you subscribe to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your Calgary Flames every day, and I will see you all tomorrow.